The metallic tang of hydraulic fluid hung heavy in the air of Hangar 7, mingling with the sweat and oil of 100 working men and women. Evelyn Thorne, known simply as Eve, had just finished calibrating the landing gear hydraulics on a C-130, her wrench still warm in her gloved hand, when the shout ripped through the din. "You! Step away from the gate, contractor." Captain Silas Vance, fresh-faced and stiff-backed, his uniform impossibly crisp, strode towards her, 2 MPs falling in behind him like shadows. Before Eve could even blink, a rough hand snatched her ID badge from her neck, and she felt the distinct shove, propelling her backward, away from the secured perimeter she'd just left. Vance's voice, amplified by the cavernous space, cut through the hangar. "You think you belong here, Miss B. Thorne? This is a military installation, not a civilian playground." The heat of the Fort Sterling sun, already baking the tarmac outside, felt glacial compared to the flush that burned Ev's cheeks. It wasn't the anger, not yet. It was the humiliation, the sudden hushed silence of the mechanics and pilots who'd stopped their work, their eyes on her, and the raw, unadulterated injustice of it all. Eve said nothing. She simply straightened, her worn flannel shirt doing little to hide the powerful set of her shoulders, her eyes locked ahead, as if she'd seen this moment coming, a familiar ghost from a past she'd meticulously buried. Vance, mistaking her stoicism for insolence, signaled the MPs with a sharp, dismissive gesture, ordering them to escort her off base immediately. The morning routines of other personnel ground to a halt. Some pulled out phones, eager to capture the spectacle of a civilian contractor being publicly ejected. Eve remained perfectly calm, didn't resist or argue, merely allowed the MPs to grip her arms as they began leading her toward the gate. It was in that moment, as they maneuvered her roughly, that her sleeve rode up just enough to reveal a faint, intricate tattoo on her left forearm. A stylized Ranger tab with the numbers 75 and 3rd bin barely visible beneath the fabric. The design was professional, the kind of ink that told a story to those who knew how to read it. Colonel Harding, the base commander passing nearby with his morning coffee, froze mid-stride. His eyes, sharp even from a distance, locked onto that partially visible tattoo. The blood drained from his face as recognition dawned. He knew that insignia. Had seen it in classified briefings, in reports marked with the highest security clearances, reports that spoke of ghosts and impossible sacrifices. His coffee cup trembled slightly in his hand as he watched Eve being led away, her dignity intact despite the public humiliation. Have you ever been judged before someone knew your story? Sometimes, the quietest people carry the heaviest burdens. Evelyn Thorne lived in a modest apartment just 15 minutes from Fort Sterling, a deliberate choice that kept her close to the work she was drawn to like a moth to a flame. At 36, she maintained a Spartan existence. No family photos on the walls. No personal mementos cluttering the surfaces. Her living space reflected a life stripped down to essentials, each item serving a purpose. Nothing superfluous or sentimental was visible to casual observation. She worked as an independent civil engineering contractor, specializing in military infrastructure with a precision that made her invaluable to base operations. Colleagues knew her as competent but quiet, someone who arrived early, worked late, and never discussed what she did before she started fixing pipes and power systems. Her daily routine spoke of an ingrained discipline that civilian life hadn't erased. She woke at 400 hours without an alarm, muscle memory pulling her from sleep at the exact moment she'd trained her body to activate. Coffee came black and strong, consumed while reviewing technical manuals that would bore most people to tears, but which she absorbed with the intensity of someone reading sacred text. Her practical pickup truck, equipped with a meticulously organized toolbox, served as both transportation and mobile office. She dressed simply, long sleeves regardless of weather, hair always pulled back, no makeup or jewelry except for a plain digital watch that she checked with military precision. On base, her professional reputation preceded her like a shadow. Maintenance crews spoke of her work in hushed, respectful tones. She fixed what others couldn't, understood military specifications with an intuitive grasp that suggested more than civilian training. She never needed to see blueprints twice, memorizing complex systems after a single glance. Other contractors wondered privately why she knew so much about classified systems, why she could navigate restricted areas with the confidence of someone who belonged there. They noticed things, how she maintained perfect physical fitness despite a job that didn't require it, how technical knowledge flowed from her that exceeded any civilian education, how stress brought out an instinctive military bearing she couldn't quite suppress. Her apartment held secrets in its very emptiness. No personal photos graced the walls, but one drawer remained locked, its contents hidden from even her closest acquaintances. Sometimes, she stood at her window watching military aircraft pass overhead with a familiarity that spoke of intimate knowledge. She used military time unconsciously, caught herself before saying, "Roger," instead of, "Okay," and kept her distinctive tattoos carefully hidden under long sleeves, even in sweltering summer heat. These small tells painted a picture of someone running from a past that refused to stay buried. Inside that locked drawer, folded with a precision that would pass any inspection, lay a uniform that hadn't seen daylight in years. Ranger tabs, commendation ribbons, and a faded combat action badge rested in their velvet cases, each one representing moments of courage and sacrifice. A group photo showed younger faces, all wearing the same unit patch, 3rd Battalion, 75th Ranger Regiment. Eve's face appeared among them, younger and proud. The only woman in a unit of elite rangers, specializing in the most dangerous demolitions work in active combat zone. Her expression in the photo radiated confidence, belonging, purpose. Everything her current life seemed to lack. Captain Vance's vendetta against Eve began to spread through the base like a virus. He told anyone who would listen about the civilian troublemaker who dared to question his authority, embellishing the story with each retelling, claiming she was disrespectful, challenging the very foundation of military order. He filed an official complaint with Colonel Harding, his report dripping with indignation. "We can't have contractors thinking they run this place," he insisted to his subordinates, building a case against someone whose only crime was existing in his sphere of influence. The security chief's analytical mind, twisted by prejudice, reviewed Eve's contractor access protocols with obsessive attention. Her clearance was legitimate, he couldn't deny that. But it came through unusual channels, an expedited approval from high command that bypassed normal vetting procedures. This irregularity irritated him further, suggesting she had connections above his pay grade, protection from someone who outranked his petty authority. The thought that a mere civilian contractor might have influence he lacked gnawed at his ego like acid. Word of Vance's campaign spread through the base grapevine. Personnel began watching Eve differently when she arrived for work. Some remained supportive. They'd seen her solve problems that stumped entire engineering teams, witnessed her dedication to keeping their facilities operational. Others grew suspicious. Vance's poison was taking root in minds predisposed to distrust outsiders. The tension built incrementally each time she passed through the gate, each security check becoming more thorough, more invasive, more designed to humiliate than protect. Base Intelligence Officer Major Ramirez, a methodical man who prided himself on thorough investigations, started asking questions about the controversial contractor. Other civilians mentioned Eve's unusual expertise in passing conversation. Maintenance crews loyal to competence over politics described her uncanny knowledge of systems that should be mysteries to someone without military training. The pieces didn't fit the narrative Vance was pushing, and Ramirez had built his career on finding truth in contradictions. Vance escalated his persecution, filing a formal security violation report that stretched truth to its breaking point. He claimed Eve was found in restricted areas, without proper escort, conveniently omitting that such access was standard for someone with her job classification. His demand that her contractor status be revoked came with barely concealed glee. "She's hiding something. I can feel it," he told Ramirez, mistaking his own prejudice for instinct. Ramirez, following proper protocol despite his growing doubts about Vance's motivations, ran Eve's biometrics through military databases. The system returned an immediate flag that made his blood run cold. "Contact Personnel Command immediately." This wasn't a normal response. not for a civilian contractor. It triggered protocols reserved for matters of national security, for identities that existed in the shadows between life and death. His investigation suddenly took on dimensions he hadn't anticipated. Whispered conversations began to ripple through the base. Personnel who worked closely with Eve started connecting dots they'd previously ignored. The way she carried herself, back straight, shoulders squared, eyes constantly scanning for threats, how she instinctively knew military protocols, used proper radio etiquette without thinking, maintained spacing in groups that spoke of combat zone training. Sergeant Miller mentioned to his squad the tattoo he'd glimpsed during a repair job in the motor pool. Military insignia too detailed to be mere decoration, too specific to be coincidence. Vance's reputation became inextricably tied to proving Eve represented a security risk. His credibility, built over years of, he believed, faithful service, now depended entirely on being right about her. The pressure mounted as other security personnel began questioning his judgment, wondering if his zealousness had crossed into persecution. But he was too far committed to back down now, his ego demanding vindication even as evidence mounted that he was tragically, catastrophically wrong about the quiet woman who just wanted to fix broken systems in peace. The setup for confrontation arrived on a humid morning when Vance, emboldened by Colonel Harding's order to resolve the contractor issue once and for all, cornered Eve during a routine maintenance call in Hangar 7. He brought 2 MPs as backup, their presence meant to intimidate, to establish the power dynamic before a word was spoken. "We know you're hiding something," he announced, his voice echoing off the metal walls. "Time to come clean about your real agenda here." The accusation hung in the air like a challenge, drawing the attention of every mechanic, every pilot, every person within earshot who stopped their work to witness what was unfolding. Eve didn't defend herself, didn't offer explanations or excuses. She simply stood there, tool bag at her feet, hands relaxed at her sides, meeting Vance's aggressive posture with quiet dignity. Her silence seemed to enrage him further, interpreting her calm as defiance rather than the self-control it represented. "People like you think you can waltz into our house and disrespect our uniform," he continued, his volume increasing with each word playing to the growing audience. The irony, that she'd shown nothing but respect while he publicly berated her, escaped him entirely. Lost in his need to assert dominance, the crowd swelled as word spread through the hangar that something significant was happening. Some personnel positioned themselves in Eve's corner, remembering kindnesses shown, problems solved, late nights she spent ensuring their equipment worked properly. Others remained uncertain, caught between Vance's authority and their own observations. The tension became electric, crackling through the space like the prelude to a thunderstorm. Vance felt the weight of all those watching eyes, interpreted their attention as validation, doubled down on his accusations with renewed venom. "You think because you know a few technical terms, because you can turn a wrench, that makes you one of us?" His words sliced through the air, each one designed to wound, to diminish, to remind everyone present of the hierarchy he believed she'd violated simply by existing in his domain. Eve's hands remained steady, but those watching closely noticed her jaw tighten almost imperceptibly, the only sign that his words were finding their mark, despite her stoic exterior. Major Ramirez arrived like a cold wind, the crowd parting before him as he approached with military bearing and a tablet clutched in his hand. His investigation was complete. The pieces of a puzzle he didn't know he was solving were finally forming a picture that defied everything Vance had been claiming. "Ma'am," he addressed Eve with notably more respect than Vance had shown, "I need you to roll up your sleeves. This is official business." The request seemed strange to those watching, but Ramirez's tone brooked no argument. It carried the weight of someone who'd discovered something profound. Eve looked around at the faces surrounding her. Mechanics she'd worked alongside. Pilots whose aircraft she'd kept operational. Support staff who'd shared coffee and small talk during long shifts. A lifetime of keeping secrets, of honoring a promise made in the shadow of death, warred with the injustice of this moment. Slowly, deliberately with movements that carried the weight of revelation, she began rolling up her sleeves. First the left, then the right. each motion precise and measured, as if performing a ritual. The collective gasp that rose from the crowd seemed to stop time itself. Her left arm bore a tattoo of exceptional detail. The 3rd Battalion, 75th Ranger Regiment patch, rendered with the precision of someone who earned the right to wear it. But it was her right arm that told the deeper story. Names etched in elegant script, each followed by dates and GPS coordinates that any veteran recognized as locations in Syria. Below those, more coordinates with dates that corresponded to highly classified military operations. And at the bottom, 2 simple notations that made several observers step back in recognition. Silver star coordinates. Purple heart date. Need. Ramirez's face drained of color as he processed what he was seeing. His fingers flew across the tablet, pulling up classified files that required his highest security clearance to access. When he spoke, his voice carried across the suddenly silent hangar, like a ghost story coming to life. Master Sergeant Evelyn Thorne, 3rd Battalion, 75th Ranger Regiment. Reported Kia, Syria, 2015. The words hung in the air, impossible and undeniable. As every person present grappled with the implications of what they were hearing, the silence that followed was absolute, sacred, the kind that falls in churches and cemeteries. Even Vance stopped talking, his mouth hanging open as his brain struggled to process information that contradicted everything he'd believed, everything he'd said, everything he'd done. The weight of realization settled over the crowd like a shroud, transforming the atmosphere from confrontation to something approaching reverence. Eve's voice, when she finally spoke, came from somewhere deep and distant, as if she were reaching back through years of carefully maintained silence to access memories she'd kept locked away. The compound was collapsing around me. A precision strike, compromised exfil. I was rigging the demo for a controlled collapse, buying time for my team and the asset to get clear, when the roof came down. Her words painted a picture of horror, with the matter-of-fact tone of someone who'd lived through the unimaginable. 3 days buried alive, digging through rubble with bare hands. When I finally crawled out, the extraction was gone. My unit believed me dead. They'd already held my memorial service. Ramirez continued reading from the classified file, his voice steady despite the emotion evident in his eyes. Master Sergeant Thorne single-handedly ensured the successful exfiltration of a high-value intelligence asset during a coordinated enemy assault on Objective Vite. Saved over 20 personnel. Declared dead after explosion collapsed compound structure. Each word added weight to the truth being revealed, transforming Eve from persecuted contractor to unrecognized hero in the span of heartbeats. I lost everything in that compound, Eve continued. Her gaze focused somewhere beyond the hangar walls, beyond the present moment. My identity, my brothers in arms, my purpose. Command said it was easier to keep me dead. The enemy had bounties on Ranger demolition specialists who'd cost them operations. I became a ghost to protect everyone I'd served with. The sacrifice implicit in her words, choosing to remain dead to keep others safe, resonated through the crowd like a physical force. The agreement she described was both simple and devastating. Military intelligence created the civilian identity of Evelyn Thorne, relocated her far from anyone who might recognize the woman she'd been in. The conditions were non-negotiable. Never reveal her military service, never claim the medals she'd earned with blood and courage, never contact her old unit or anyone from her former life. The price of staying alive was staying silent, accepting a kind of living death that honored the sacrifice her country believed she'd already made. Vance's face cycled through a spectrum of emotions as the full weight of what he'd done crashed over him. Disbelief gave way to horror. Horror to shame. Shame to something that might be the beginning of understanding. Other personnel stared at him with expressions ranging from disgust to pity, watching a man realize Hyde persecuted a hero who gave up everything to keep people like him safe. His authority, built on rigid hierarchy and unexamined prejudice, crumbled like sandcastles before an incoming tide. You want to know what I'm hiding? Eve's voice gained strength, though it never rose above a conversational level. I'm hiding the fact that I died for this country and live to serve it again. I keep my word, even when people like you make me remember why I stayed dead. The accusation landed with devastating precision, each word an indictment not just of Vance, but of a system that could allow such injustice to occur. What would you do if you discovered someone's hidden heroic past? Share your thoughts. Colonel Harding arrived at the hangar with the measured steps of someone who'd just had his worldview fundamentally altered. The base commander reviewed Ramirez's findings with growing comprehension, recognizing Eve's true identity from classified briefings he'd attended years ago. The woman standing before him, humiliated and exposed by his security chief's prejudice, was the ghost story whispered in intelligence circles. The Ranger demolitions expert who refused to die even when the mountain fell on her. His order came swift and unequivocal. All harassment of MSAs. Thorne ceases immediately. Anyone who continues will answer to me personally. No, narrate. The honor dilemma that followed revealed the depth of Eve's commitment to her sworn silence. Harding wanted to right this wrong in the most visible way possible. Public recognition, restoration of military honors, a ceremony befitting someone who saved an entire forward operating base. But Eve refused with the same quiet determination that kept her digging through tons of rubble with bloodied hands. I gave my word to stay dead, she said simply. Dead soldiers don't need parades. The statement carried a finality that even a colonel could not override. Vance's downfall unfolded with the inexorable momentum of justice delayed but not denied. His harassment of a decorated war hero became the scandal that rocked Fort Sterling. Every snide comment, every petty humiliation, every abuse of power was documented and reported up the chain of command. He faced immediate disciplinary action with the promise of worse to come. Possible dismissal, certainly disgrace. The man who built his identity on protecting the base had become its greatest embarrassment. Eve's terms for moving forward were characteristically modest. She'd continue her contractor work, fixing the systems that kept the base operational, but she wanted Vance removed from any possibility of interaction with her. No public recognition, no ceremony, no tearful reunions with surviving members of her unit. Just let me do my job in peace, she requested. The same thing she'd wanted since arriving at Fort Sterling with her toolbox and her secrets. A quiet revolution spread through the base in the wake of the revelation. Personnel who learned the truth through whispers and careful conversations treated Eve with newfound respect that she neither sought nor acknowledged. Maintenance crews went out of their way to make her job easier. Officers nodded acknowledgement when they passed her in corridors. A subtle recognition that cost nothing but meant everything. Vance found himself isolated, his former supporters distancing themselves from someone who could so spectacularly misjudge character. Professional recognition came without fanfare, exactly as Eve preferred. Base engineering specifically requested her for all major projects. Her expertise was no longer a mystery, but a resource to be carefully utilized. Her pay grade received a quiet upgrade through administrative channels, no explanation needed or given. She remained a contractor in title, but everyone understood she was something more. A guardian angel in work boots and flannel, keeping their systems running with the same dedication she once applied to defusing bombs. Vance's exile manifested as a transfer to a remote desk position where his capacity for harm was neutralized. His career, built on rigid adherence to hierarchy and surface judgments, effectively ended with a whimper rather than the bang he might have preferred. The final image of his downfall came as he packed his office, watching through the window as Eve directed a major infrastructure repair project with the natural authority of someone who'd earned respect through competence rather than rank. Eve's choice to continue living simply, working quietly, serving without recognition, spoke to a definition of heroism that transcended medals and ceremonies. She honored her fallen unit not through grand gestures, but through faithful service. Each repaired system a small monument to those who didn't make it home. True heroism, she demonstrated daily, didn't need applause. It needed only the opportunity to continue serving. 6 months passed like seasons changing, and Eve worked on a critical infrastructure project that would ensure the base's water supply remained uncontaminated for decades to come. New personnel who'd arrived since the incident didn't know her story, treated her as nothing more than a skilled contractor who knew her business. She preferred it that way, the anonymity allowing her to work without the weight of others' expectations or misplaced reverence. The Silent Sentinels Memorial Wall project brought unexpected emotional weight to Eve's routine. Base Command had decided to renovate the memorial to fallen service members, and Eve volunteered for the foundation work, laboring alone in the early morning hours when the base was quiet and she could work undisturbed. It was there, in the pre-dawn darkness, with only her work lights for company, that she discovered old plaques from Afghanistan and Syria casualties embedded in the deteriorating concrete. Her own name appeared among the honored dead, etched in brass that was tarnished but still readable. Master Sergeant Evelyn Thorne, 3rd Battalion, 75th Ranger Regiment, Kia, Syria, 2015. She knelt before it, her weathered fingers tracing letters that represented a life she could never reclaim. Tears fell silently onto stone that was supposed to mark her grave, each drop a testament to the strange grief of mourning oneself. The decision she faced in that moment could restore her official existence. With a few phone calls to the right people, she could reclaim her name, her rank, her history. Instead, she reinforced the memorial's foundation with special care, ensuring this monument to sacrifice would stand long after everyone who knew her secret had moved on. Her choice to remain among the honored dead wasn't about hiding anymore. It was about keeping faith with the brothers she lost and the promise she made. The first iconic image came at sunrise when young soldiers passed the memorial during their morning run. They rendered crisp salutes to the fallen heroes listed there, including Evelyn Thorne, while the real Eve worked 50 feet away in civilian clothes, invisible but present. She paused in her work, her body automatically assuming the position of attention for the duration of their tribute. It was a moment of perfect symmetry, the living honoring the dead while the dead honored the living. Cultural change manifested in small but significant ways throughout the base. When a fresh security officer arrived and began hassling contractors with the same prejudicial attitude Vance displayed, senior personnel intervened immediately. "That's not how we treat people here," they said firmly, the lesson of respect having taken root in institutional memory. Eve's influence spread like ripples from a stone dropped in still water, each circle wider than the last. The ripple effect extended beyond Fort Sterling's gates. Contractors at other military installations reported improved treatment, a shift in attitude that traced back to the story they'd heard in hushed conversations. Word spread through military networks about the importance of respecting civilian workers, of remembering that not everyone's service wore a uniform. Vance's disgrace became a teaching moment, a cautionary tale about the dangers of judgment without understanding. The second iconic image captured the essence of Eve's dual existence as her final workday ended. Her weathered hands packed tools with the same precision she once applied to diffusing explosives, each item cleaned and stored in its designated place as the base flag was lowered at retreat. She stood motionless despite being in work clothes, rather than uniform, honoring the ritual that once defined her daily life. Other contractors, inspired by her example, followed suit, creating an unexpected moment of reverence that transcended official protocol. The drive home took Eve past familiar landmarks as sunset painted the sky in shades of amber and rose. Her radio played news about a military recognition ceremony for recent heroes returning from deployment. She turned it off, preferring the silence that had become her companion through years of voluntary exile. On her dashboard sat a single photo, her old unit in Syria, faces young and hopeful, unaware of the fate awaiting them in compounds beneath ancient mountains. Her commitment to maintaining her cover remained absolute. At a traffic light she rolled down her sleeves, hiding her story once again beneath fabric and silence. In the rearview mirror, the base flag flew at full staff against the darkening sky. She had kept her word to stay dead, served with honor in shadows where recognition could not follow. The sacrifice continued, not from obligation, but from choice. Each day a renewal of vows made to ghosts she carried with her. Do you know any unsung heroes in your community? Honor them in the comments. The final revelation came through investigation rather than confession. Local families of fallen soldiers spoke in wondering tones about anonymous contributions that arrived when most needed. College funds that suddenly had enough for tuition. Mortgages paid off before foreclosure. Medical bills that disappeared through charitable donations from an unknown source. Eve donated half her contractor earnings to those left behind, her secret service extending far beyond base maintenance into the maintenance of lives shattered by loss. Her truck disappeared down the highway as the camera pulled back to reveal the base perimeter in twilight. Security guards waved respectfully to departing contractors, a simple gesture that would have been unthinkable before Eve's truth came to light. Her influence rippled outward, permanent, transformative, invisible as the woman herself chose to remain. What started as one person's persecution had become an entire community's education in respect and recognition. The memorial wall stood illuminated in golden hour light, Evie's name among the heroes carved in stone and brass. Fresh flowers appeared regularly beside her nameplate, placed by unknown hands in the pre-dawn darkness. Some might be from those who knew the truth, others from those who simply honored the fallen. The distinction didn't matter. The dead who lived on through others remembered their own, whether they walked among us or rested beneath Arlington's grass. The closing image lingered on that memorial, on the name that represented both ultimate sacrifice and continued service. Evelyn Thorne died in Syria and lived on at Fort Sterling, a ghost who fixed broken systems and broken assumptions with equal skill. Her story, never officially told, spread through whispered conversations and changed behaviors, through respect given to those whose service took unconventional forms. In choosing to remain dead, she'd become more alive in the consciousness of those she served than any ceremony could achieve. True heroes, after all, didn't need parades. They needed only the opportunity to continue their watch, whether in uniform or work clothes, whether recognized or invisible, whether living their truth or guarding it in silence.